Hello, this is Alexander Niprakis, and I'll be presenting today on group policy. So the first question you might have is, what is group policy? Group policy, as it says up there, group policy specifies settings for groups of users and of computers, including registry-based policy settings, security settings, software settings, scripts, computer startup and shutdown and log off and on, and folder redirection. Okay, so that's great. So what does that actually mean? Put succinctly, group policy allows an administrator to apply settings or restrictions on a set of computers or users in Active Directory. So you can imagine a whole Active Directory domain that you can have certain policies that apply to everyone and certain ones that apply to certain people and certain policies that apply to certain computers. As it says up there, Active Directory is Microsoft's centralized security and management product. It was basically a competitor to Novell NetWare, and it was introduced in Windows 2000. An earlier version of the Active Directory product, which wasn't called Active Directory, was available in NT4 and below. Group policy is the latest advancement in Microsoft's ability to manage desktops and Windows operating systems, and it was introduced in Windows 2000. It's basically an updated version of system policies from NT4. So just as an aside, we've had group policy for a while. It's been around since Windows 2000, which came out around 2000. But the NT4 system policies have existed a long time before that, and there was something similar in Windows 95 and 98. I actually used it quite a bit early on in my career. So this is a screenshot of a Windows 98 machine, and it's showing Policy Editor, which is very similar to what we're going to look at today, which is group policy. So the other important question is, why would we want to use group policy? Well, from an integrity and availability standpoint, group policy really helps you. As we all know, users have the propensity to do things that harm their systems. So group policy really prevents them from doing that. It also can prevent users from performing modifications to the system that may affect integrity. So if you think about it, the integrity is maintained by preventing users from installing software or modifying the system, and availability is maintained because the user can't destroy the computer. Group policy also has some other capabilities, like implementing a baseline across a group of computers or installing software, and then obviously using startup and shutdown scripts, you can do a whole bunch of other management tasks. The possibilities are essentially endless, especially with group policy in 2008, which supports PowerShell. So these two screenshots are showing on the left is a Windows 98 computer, the one we were looking at earlier, and on the right is a Windows 7 computer. And both of them have the similar concept. Basically, you have certain policies that apply to a computer and certain ones that apply to a user. And so you can put a computer in a particular OU or set a default domain policy and have it go to all computers in the organization. And those policies would apply to computers, and then there's certain ones that apply to users that are set when the user logs in. So another important consideration is that as opposed to the old 95 and 98 policies, you can actually store these on a domain controller. These are the non-local domain policies, and what people may not realize is that you can actually set policies on your own workstation without a domain controller. This obviously is pretty handy. So they can apply to 4 different places, as I've been kind of alluding to. The root of the domain site, which is a little bit more difficult to get into, so I'm going to skip it. An organizational unit and a specific computer, so that, like I said, you can actually edit your own computer's group policy, and it can lock down the computer. Before we go any further, an important note is that group policies are complex. There's hundreds, thousands, I have no idea. There's tons of options and settings that you can set with group policy. Group policies build on each other. So if you have one at the domain level and one at an OU level, they will coalesce unless you've turned off inheritance, which is the next point. You can block the inheritance of a particular of group policy to a particular OU. So I'll show that in my demonstration. You can enforce a group policy which prevents it from being blocked. And this is kind of your on-off switch for OUs that you want to not inherit certain policies, but you want them to inherit others. And basically, and we'll kind of go into this, you can set up your group policy so that it renders a workstation basically useless with the different settings that you do. So we're going to demonstrate that group policy is an effective way to manage computers on a Windows network. And although there have been problems in the past with group policy, it is an effective way of securing your computers on your network. So this first demonstration is going to show a domain level group policy which is going to turn off the file menu in Windows Explorer for the default user profile. It'll also remove the security tab. And again, we're going to kind of go into this concept of inheritance in this demonstration. So to start out with, what you're going to do is you're going to go into group policy management, and for each domain, and I've got one domain here, there's a default domain policy. So basically what I've done here is under user configuration and policies, admin templates, Windows components, and Windows Explorer. I'm going to show you that I've turned on a few options. Now again, just take a minute to look at this. Look at all the options that are there just for Explorer. And a lot of these have these options, and you can see that literally everything on the OS can be changed. So what I've done is I've removed the file menu from Windows Explorer and removed the security tab. See how it's basically just you double click and you go in here and you set this. Okay. So now let's log in to the station with the user that's going to have this applied to them. So you'll notice that the security tab is now missing. And if I look up here, there's no file menu. Now, let's say that you have a set of administrator users. In fact, the user that we're going to show is administrator, that you do not want this restriction to be placed on. That's simple enough. We've got the administrator user in a group called NoPol, myself and the administrator on here, and basically in the group policy management console, I just right-clicked and said block inheritance on NoPol, and that prevents inheritance from occurring. So now, if I log in as administrator on the same machine, you'll see that, in fact, security is there, and if I just go here, you'll see the file menu is there. Now, let's say that you want to now allow no file to have the same thing, so I'm going to go ahead and log out. Group policies for users are usually sent out when the user logs in. You can force an update, but usually this is done on login. So I'm going to go into my users and computers. I'm going to find my user no file, which is at the root here. I'm just going to move him into NoPol. And now he is in here, he or she. So I'm going to re-log in. And with any hope, you'll see security now pops up, and you'll also see file menu is available. Okay, so that's an awesome demonstration. At least I thought it was. What else can we do? Well, an interesting thing that I've done in here is I've actually set up a computer to basically operate as a kiosk. So what it's going to do is it's automatically going to log the user into the computer, and that user's profile has a special setting called custom user interface, which basically turns this into a web browser. So, well, that's what it looks like, but let's look at the group policy. So this particular computer appears in this kiosk group. And we'll go in here, and basically the first place we're going to look at the computer configuration preferences and window settings and registry. Now, if you think about it, what I'm showing you here is a pretty powerful tool. You can actually send out registry settings to the desktop through group policy. So as most people know, most programs set most of their settings through the registry settings. So if you have a particular program that you want to customize and it doesn't have, it isn't part of the schema of group policy, you can easily control this using group policy and just deploying it. So this is, I mean, there's nothing magical about this. You can look it up online on how to set your computer to auto login. So basically I've got auto admin login set to on. And you can see the other values that I've set, the domain, the password, and the username. So beyond that, the other interesting thing is that we've got a policy for our user, test2, who is also in this group, which says that it doesn't get a normal Windows Explorer shell. So we're going to go to Administrative Templates and Policies and System. You can see custom user interface, and it runs this script that's on the C drive of the computer that's getting it. I've also done another thing on here, which is to remove the ability for the user to basically do anything with the machine by turning off all of the options that you would get if you did a Control-Alt-Delete. And I've also removed the ability in the computer security policy to allow the user to log in to switch users, basically, so fast user switching. I've also turned off remote desktop, but that doesn't really matter. So again, the repercussion of this is this computer, this is all it does. So I'm going to show you from boot up. This is like I just pulled the power plug. It should take it a second here to log in. And you'll see that it automatically logged itself in, and here's where you are. Now, there are things the user can do. So they can, for instance, they can still kill this, but you'll see that it automatically just shuts it down. This may take a second. Actually reboots it. And obviously the page didn't load, but all right. So another thing that the user can do is they can still do Control-Delete, which is right there, but you'll see that they can't do anything. Okay, this is all well and good. So what happens if I need to work on this thing? This is, as we were talking about earlier, you can actually render a computer pretty much useless using group policy, and I would call this pretty much useless. So let's say that we have to repair something on it. It's pretty simple. I'm going to go into here. I'm going to go into Kiosk. I'm going to find my station 3, this is that computer. I'm going to put it into this no kiosk group. And bear with me for a minute. I'm going to force a refresh on that computer. So it's pulling the policy back down. It's going to discover that it's in this new group, and the main meat of this policy is that it goes in and unsets that register setting. So it sets this to 0, which disables the auto login. All right, I'm going to shut down that computer. And we should see it shut down. Okay, now it's going to come back up. And if everything is happy, what we should get is a normal prompt to log in, which we do. And now this computer would operate just like anything else. So, it's logged in, got normal desktop, everything, so you can see that this computer is just normal. So again, you might ask yourself, well, that seems pretty good. You're zipping through it. You're probably been working with AD for a couple of years at least. What about me? I've never touched it. How is this easy? Well, you can see that by setting up your group policies and placing computers in containers, you can easily apply settings to those computers, and you don't have to go around and change things. And you've also saw how it's pretty simple to go ahead and change settings by just moving a computer or a user around. So you saw, for instance, a user that had certain restrictions. I just unrestricted them by moving them to a different OU. So anyways, the conclusion here is that your options on Windows are pretty thin. You probably are going to use group policy to secure a Windows computer. It is a very extremely important part of your Windows Active Directory domain. It is what you use to deploy stuff. It's what you use to set settings. It's what you use to maintain integrity and availability. It's your core. And a last note, I need to stress this a lot. There are plenty of settings in here that you can turn on that can make users' lives miserable. You have the responsibility of determining what the minimum the user needs to do their job, but also make sure that they have enough to do their job. The worst thing you can do is to render a computer unusable by the use of group policy. So when I'm presenting this will be the time for questions. So, and here's my sources. So that's it.